Welcome to the Naturally Healthy Pets Podcast. Let's get to it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm really happy to have as my guest today, Dr. Conor Brady, because when he and I start talking about things, sometimes we go really off the rails and we have way too much fun. So just excuse us if we start having a party. Today we're going to talk about monsters within the rapidly advancing world of canine probiotics, which it is changing literally every week. So for those of you who do not know Dr. Conor Brady, he's a full-time writer, speaker, and dedicated advocate for natural canine feeding and health. And you can find a lot of his work at dogsfirst.ie because he's based in Ireland. And he has the most phenomenal book that came out in 2020 called Feeding Dogs, Dry or Raw, The Science Behind the Debate. And he says it's for the nerds, but let me tell you, there's so much fact versus fiction in this book, and he backs up what he's talking about with studies and facts and science, which we need more and more of that because we're, climbing this uphill battle. He lives in Ireland with his two daughters, Holly and Zoe, and his wife, Elaine, and he's a proud father to a slightly or very odd blue roan cocker called Dudley. And he says that what Dudley lacks in brains and finesse, he makes up with single-minded determination, although that statement is equally true for both of us. Conor, thanks for joining me.
Love it, Judy. I love being here. I'm just itching to go as always. I get energized thinking about coming on. I love it.
Good. All right. So we're going to talk about probiotics, which means that first we need to talk about gut flora. So for those who haven't been on this bandwagon talking about microbiome and gut flora and all of that, which frankly, we never talked about before the past few years.
Yeah.
And when my mother was sick in the hospital with GI stuff, and I brought up microbiome and gut flora, the surgeon kind of his eyes crossed and he looked at me like, yeah, exactly. Like, what are you even talking about? And this was a year ago. So, not like it was in the Stone Ages. We should be getting on board. So just give everybody a little bit of background of what gut flora is, what it does, why we should care.
I was on the way back from, I was just at the gym, just dropping that in. So I was at the gym and I'm on the way back and they give you a free apple. And I was eating the apple and the apple was absolutely delicious. I was thinking, this is gorgeous. Nicest apple I've ever had in my life. And it was because it was sweet. It was a sweet apple. And so let's start with the sweetness. Okay, so I've just back from a week's holiday in Spain. And we, when you're on holidays, you're just pumping cocktails, anesthetizing yourself because it's kids for a solid week. And you come back with this, and you're eating junk food, and you come back with this need for sugar, terrible sweet tooth, and everyone's switched on. And it's very hard to get back on your diet after those first 2, 3, 4 days at home. I just ate rings around me, ate anything with sugar in it in the house. That was gone after the first day or two. Can I have a honey sandwich? Can adults do that? I don't know if you do that over there, but it was a treat as a kid over here. And I'm like, just sugar, sugar, sugar. So what is that? Okay, some people think they have a sweet tooth. What you have is a chemical kind of drive for more sugar. Okay, it's like, I need sugar now. And so you can switch it on, and it takes a few weeks to switch it off before you get back onto your good diet and you enjoy a salad as much as you did that apple in the car. And so what is that? That is your gut flora. As you feed a certain wolf inside you, and as you feed more and more sugar, you will shift your gut flora, and you will get a group of bacteria that will sit there and go, yeah, we love sugar, nom, nom, nom. And whatever bacteria you feed grows. And so suddenly you'll start to grow this gut flora that just starts to demand sugar. And how it does that is unbelievable. How your gut flora steers you like a puppeteer is unbelievable. They release compounds. Or cut off the flow of compounds in some cases. Compounds that relax you, or release compounds that make you agitated. So you go and get the thing that you want. Great study out of France. I'll come back to what gut flora is in a second, but a great study out of France was in not alcoholics, big drinkers. And they gave them probiotics for a month, and they found a huge decrease in most of them, huge decrease in drinking just from taking probiotics, because for all we know, it's the sugar in the booze that's making us really want the booze. Like, do you really want that glass of wine at 6 o'clock? Is it really the glass of wine you want, or is it the sugar that's in it? And so your body can con you. And it's the same with colic in babies. They found colic all have the same bacteria, and now they believe that that terrible pain that babies are feeling. What do you do when the baby's screaming at you relentlessly? You feed it, and if you feed them, particularly bottle-fed babies, if you feed them, you get a high sugar content, and it could be that the bacteria is demanding that sugar, and it orchestrates a crying baby because nobody leaves crying. Yeah, and so they're all overweight, and they all have the same shift in bacteria. Dogs in a fight, they all have the same bacteria, but it's not food related; it's stress related. So the point is, gut flora are all these different organisms in your gut, not just bacteria, but yeasts and protozoan things, single cell things that swim around, and even viruses. They all play a role in this kind of melee that we've got maybe 1.5, 2 kilos of in weight. We're like 10 times, genes wise, we're 10 times more bacteria than we are human from a genome point of view. So we've got this huge amount of it, and dogs have whatever amount inside them as well. Slightly different gut flora to us. But that gut flora is really important. It's like a garden, and you got to keep those guys happy. Okay, so a lot of them give you beneficial compounds, digest all your food. They play a role in huge amounts of health. They actually fix your gut lining, everything. So keeping your gut flora happy, all these different organisms in balance, although we don't really know what that balance is, they just sort it out amongst themselves by feeding a good diet and being healthy and not stressed and all the things we kind of know we should be doing. Keeping them happy results in good health. When you don't keep them happy and they shift into this negative state, this dysbiotic state, as I had with this sugar demanding gut, you don't stay healthy. Suddenly this group that grows, he's not a beneficial bacteria. In fact, he just poos everywhere and creates inflammation and toxins. He doesn't care about digesting your food or giving you vital nutrients or head-soothing compounds. He's just a bit more of a parasite than a good guy, you know. So that's my introduction to gut flora. Yeah, there you go.
That is so cool, because I personally do not like sugar. I don't like the taste of sugar, and I don't eat sweets like cakes and cookies and pies. Like, it just has zero attraction to me. However, if I have a couple of martinis, then all of a sudden I want ice cream, and not only ice cream, but all the toppings that, you know, like put the sprinkles, put the syrup, you know, put all that, just more and more and more sugar. So it's really, I mean, it's so true. And it's very interesting how that sets up that craving. And man, next time that happens, I'm going to have a little conversation with the guys down below and say, yeah, you're not driving this train. That's very cool. So basically the microbiome or the gut flora can get really screwed up by what we eat, what we're taking in. So how do our dogs or pets get a screwed up microbiome? Like, what are some of the things that contribute to that?
Oh, well, we have, the studies are in, and we know that feeding kibble, you know, chemically preserved dry food, alters the gut flora. Now, we can't say that has a negative result on health because that's an enormous study. The implications of changing the gut flora is you need millions of animals and tested and controlled because of diet. So it's very hard to imply what a shift in gut flora means for large populations of animals. But we do know that kibble compared to raw-fed dogs, when you switch them over and back, it changes their gut flora. The poo comes out and you measure the poo. Very simple to do. In fact, those biome tests that they sell to check your gut flora to see where they actually only analyze about 20% of your gut flora. The other 80% of your gut flora is dark matter. They haven't a clue what it is. Isn't that interesting? And so, but they look at 20% and they say, this is what your gut flora is like. And so we know from eating things like chemically preserved kibble, because, you know, kibble has chemical preservatives in it that is like chemical napalm, essentially, and it's to kill all the bacteria in the product so things don't grow in it for a year, 2, 3 years. I've found it behind, you know, couches, and it's just been there for 3 years. And so, but and raw dog food can restore kind of a more beneficial, more varied, is what they would say, more species-rich gut flora. So that's one thing. But other products will do it. I mean, what's the effect of feeding canned, where they've already eliminated the life, you know, cooked and processed? You've got all different foods coming out, all different types of ways of preserving it, natural preservatives. What effect do they have on your gut flora? We really don't know, but they all do affect it. In fact, even taking probiotics, just to give a quick spiel on what the word probiotic is. Probiotic means biotic that's needed for life. Okay, so it's for life, it's needed. So you've got prebiotics, which is the food they eat, and essentially anything is a prebiotic. No matter what you eat, a martini is a prebiotic. Anything that you give to your gut, something will eat it and grow. So everything's a prebiotic. There's some cool ones you can give when they've got diarrhea and stuff. Probiotic means for life, and the new word is postbiotic. What they produce, they're the really beneficial, cool things. So when we're talking about how we take bacteria probiotics later on, the really cool way to take them now is a cup with some full fat probiotic yogurt, live probiotic yogurt, if you can buy it that way, full fat plain probiotic yogurt, and a bit of water. And you put your probiotic in that. You open up your capsule, might only be half a capsule for your dog, and you leave it sitting at room temperature for 30 minutes or an hour. And what you're growing is you activate the bacteria because you have to wake them up. They're freeze dried. Okay, so there's no point taking a freeze-dried capsule because they have to get to the gut and wake up. And the speed of the dog's digestive system, we want this thing to be firing in the small intestines. So you put it in the liquid and they wake up and then they get to eating the food, nom, 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 nom. And then they grow and then they exude out all their amazing compounds. And then you give it to your dog 30 minutes before they have their dinner. Because people put the probiotics on the food and the gut flora just the gut acidity just napalms them. Okay, we're trying to get the troops to the guns. So you put them in the liquid and you let the dog drink the liquid before dinner. And so the stomach doesn't hold on to liquids. Off you go, guys, straight to the intestines, and you get this massive release of life. It's a numbers game. So
Interesting.
So the probiotic bit comes from what you eat, also how you eat it and when you eat it, that kind of thing. And what you really want is those postbiotics. And so we grow them in a cup, making a little fermented drink, as Billy Hogan would be delighted to hear. And you make this little fermented drink, but you make them drink it beforehand for bacterial probiotics and for humans. That's the way to take them.
That is really interesting. I have never heard that before. So I've been putting probiotics in my dog's food, so probably wasteful. And luckily, my dogs are all pretty dang healthy, and they're raw fed, so shocking. But that's really interesting. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, I got to get some, good yogurt, or could you put them in? So you're talking about yogurt, but you're talking about a liquid. So could you take your capsule and put it in bone broth and let that kind of ferment and do it? So anything like that?
Yeah.
Ooh. Man. Now my dogs are going to be really thrilled.
And what you put them in is going to grow certain communities, because other communities might be putting the yogurt and they'll go, I don't want to grow in this. And other communities will blossom as a result. If you leave them on different surfaces and different temperatures, everything, you'll grow. You've got 300 species of bacteria in your guts. So when, what probiotics we're taking is very interesting, because at the moment there's a lot of canine probiotics and there's human probiotics. And we know the dogs are quite different in the gut flora department because they're highly meat eatery and we eat more plants. And so, of course, they're going to look different and their guts are smooth and they've no dead ends to hold the material, which bacteria like, because then they can ferment the food. Dogs just have a straight pipe, straight through, because they're supposed to be eating meat all the time. And so their gut flora is different, but it turns out, identified for me by a professor in biotics, and she said, oh yeah, there's no such thing as canine probiotics in a talk that we were doing. And I'm like, well, I'm the dog person, of course there is. They have to be different. And she goes, well, they are different, but they're different in anaerobic bacteria that don't like oxygen. And so we can only make probiotics with two main groups, lactobacillus and bifido, which everybody's heard of these two groups. They're in your yogurt, and they're the two groups that like oxygen. And so we can only make them in oxygenated laboratories, and they're sold in oxygenated pet shops and oxygenated kitchens. So you can't make anaerobic bacteria pills because they'll die. So it turns out that the human probiotics and canine probiotics are very, very similar. If anything, the human probiotics are made better. More specifically, you can buy probiotics for mood enhancement, for everything from kidney disease to just basic broad spectrum probiotics for IBD. And so often there's a picture of a dog on the front, but how specific is it to dogs? Well, any of the information that say, for dogs with IBD, that comes from the human realm. The human ones are often better made. They're about a third of the price. They're available locally. And so I'm not absolutely stuck on the idea of you have to feed a canine probiotic, because, have they actually geared that up for a dog? Less likely that they have. Some of the really best-selling probiotics in the human health shops are probably better probiotics, and I often use them. I just recovered Dudley from diarrhea. I came back from Spain, brown liquid diarrhea coming out of the dog. So all the dogs had it in there. My brother's dog was in there. She had it, a particularly impressive golden retriever, brown liquid. And I'm thinking, okay, what do? I don't want to give this dog anything. So I said, I'll ignore it, first of all. That's the first tactic. And I just fed her. I skipped a meal. I skipped a meal with Dudley and fed him that night. Brown liquid all over the kitchen floor in the morning. I said, okay, I've got to address this. So I skipped his food for the day. Okay, starved him for 24 hours and just gave him his probiotic in the liquid, in the liquid yogurt. I swear to God, within 2 days, the dog was back on track. I took a picture of his poo, his stools 2 days ago. Perfect stools. After just 2 days, my brother's golden retriever is still pooing liquid. And so this idea of using it was a human probiotic from the fridge. We get what's the name of the probiotic? I can't remember the name of it, but it's very popular over here. So that was just a human probiotic, and it did the trick because my brother's dog is not recovering. So it's interesting that I probably wouldn't pay too much for the dog varieties myself.
Interesting. Well, and we have lots of different options here as well. All right, we need to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about things other than bacteria that we use. And I want to touch on the role of probiotics as far as behavior with our pets, because that's kind of a biggie. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
One of our favorite guest lecturers is Dr. Conor Brady. Founder of Dogs First, Dr. Brady is a highly trained researcher working specifically in natural pet care. He's passionate about helping dog lovers get to the root cause of their issues to avoid the constant cycle of going back to the vet for meds that only suppress symptoms. Dr. Conor's 4 courses are now available on drjudyu.com, and you can enjoy 10% off his courses using code PODCAST12 when purchasing Canine Allergy, Behavior, the Colossal Role of Nutrition, What Do Dogs Eat, Carnivore or Omnivore, and The Complete Myth.
Okay, so we you mentioned that probiotics or the gut flora is made up of not just bacteria, but also yeast and fungi and viruses and protozoa. There's a lot of things that go in there. But one of the things that now people have started talking about is Aspergillosis.
Yeah.
And so can we talk about that and what it might be used for, and studies that you might have seen? Why is this now something that seems to be beneficial, and when would we use it?
It's amazing. This soil-based probiotics, SBOs, is what people will call them. They're amazing. They kind of started messing around with them 10, 20 years ago, Irish, UK soils, and they started using them for all different things. So Aspergillosis is actually a yeast. And so people will wonder, can I take this with a yeast-infected dog? Absolutely. This particular yeast is a probiotic, is for life. It's beneficial for us because it releases compounds that kills bad bacteria. And so, fungi and bacteria hate each other. That's how we found out about antibiotics. The plate and the fungi was keeping the bacteria at bay, but not touching it. How did it do it? It was pumping chemicals into the environment. We take those chemicals and we make antibiotics. So now we have a natural antibiotic in Aspergillosis. And so you can take Aspergillosis in a capsule. You don't have to feed that in the liquid kind of idea because nothing kills yeast, as you know, as a vet. So you just put it on top of the food and the dog can take it. And the yeast will hang around inside the dog's digestive system for a little while because it's not where he wants to live. But while there, they release compounds that kill only bad bacteria, not even the good guys. And now they believe it's actually very specific to the types of salmonella that it kills, which is even more anyway. So I'm thinking, okay, they were using it as a Aspergillosis with a really gut sick dog, gastroenteritis, and these, really troublesome IBS, IBD cases. At the very start, they'd say, right, give Aspergillosis to weed the garden, and then you do your bacterial probiotic to seed the garden. I thought that's cool. So now my advice for these particularly troubled gut ideas is like, okay, let's just pop in Aspergillosis and see what happens. Give that for a week, and then we move on to the bacterial probiotics for 2 weeks. I don't give the probiotics for too long, by the way. Healthy dogs don't need probiotics. Dogs that have healthy, fresh diets do not need probiotics. In fact, a study shows that putting in probiotics shifts the gut flora as well. So you really don't know what you're doing here. This is dark arts. We use these things like medicines and then we stop, and then the gut flora will get back on track. So that's what Aspergillosis does, but it does way more than that. It does, so it works with dogs with IBD, IBS type issues. It kills other bad yeasts. It decreases inflammation, probably because it kills the baddies. It works for Giardia. Massive study in Giardia. Listen to this in a study in Giardia. 8 groups of animals, reading this off the corner of my screen, 8 groups of animals with Giardia infection, I think there's about 20 in each group. A reduction of approximately 90% in the parasitic load was observed in all treated groups. That's unbelievable. 90%.
Which is so amazing, because I can't tell you how many times in practice we get puppies coming from puppy mills or pet stores or, not good environments. And they're coming in with Giardia, and we treat them with all the, napalm chemicals, and they just come back again and again and again. And then we end up with every animal in the household infected. Sometimes we end up with the people infected. And it is such a problem.
Yeah.
And if we could get rid of 90% of the parasitic load by using something that the body likes, that's huge.
It's just incredible.
So now we've started with animals that are taking antibiotics. S. boulardii is one of the things that I've had people use, because it's going to keep those bad guys in check, which when you give an antibiotic, you kill a lot of the good guys, and the bad guys kind of go, "Ooh, we're taking over," which is why we get things like C. diff, and that kills people.
Interesting.
So how do you recommend, if an animal is placed on antibiotics, which we know is going to destroy the gut microbiome? By the way, there's a lot of other medications that also destroy the gut microbiome, which is why we try to avoid them. How do you recommend, if somebody has an animal is either on antibiotics or has just finished a course of antibiotics, how do they repopulate the gut? Or is there something you recommend doing while they are on the drugs?
Yeah, non-vet here, guys. I mean, Dr. Conor Brady, but but
he does all this research.
Yeah,
so you read all the studies.
I have the people that know more about this would say, the science is in, it's done. That they know feeding probiotics with antibiotics is a very, very good idea, but not together. So they separate them out morning and night. Or if you have to take your antibiotics, they separate them by as much as you can. So you keep the probiotics away from the antibiotics and deliver them in liquid form. So it is a very good idea to be taking probiotics with antibiotics. I can share the study later, just a CMA and cover my bottom. But it is definitely the way to do it. And the second after that, it would be, well, you've got to dry up the dog and make sure that he's healthy and can take food. So sometimes the first couple of days, whatever works to shore up this poo. I just gave the dog a boiled chicken because I made broth from a carcass, so he just got that, and that worked a treat because I know he likes chicken, but you guys can use turkey, whatever. But after a couple of days, then the trick is to vary the diet. So put in a few little varying ingredients, because again, you're trying to replenish that gut flora. So you don't just feed one diet for 3 or 4 weeks. You're trying to move the diet around. Once you get that gut back under control, you start to move the diet around, and you're feeding different communities, and you start to develop a more robust gut flora, because it takes a long time to get over antibiotics. Sometimes you can keep the changes for life. Pregnant women can pass them on to infants as shifted gut flora. Probiotics can do the same thing. But so I'd recommend that. I'm giving the probiotics for a certain amount of time and stopping. I was giving them for a week or two and then just stop with the probiotics. But varying the diet is probably the way to do it. Focusing on the prebiotics. What do these guys like to eat? That's what grows them. Putting in a probiotic with 6 or 7 groups of bacteria in there. Sure, what do we know that the gut needs? Maybe you've just moved in 20 plumbers when they needed electricians. You can't just move one type of people into a housing estate, as we know. So they have a very set way of doing things. There's things in charge, and you just go dump in the wrong groups of bacteria as much as you thought they were friends. So that'd be my advice for the diarrhea and antibiotic kind of dog. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I recently had to take a round of antibiotics, which I rarely do. It was one of those desperation situations. But in reading the insert about the antibiotic, it actually talked about it could cause GI problems, like wiping out your gut, even months after you take the drug. So it's really interesting that you say it can cause a shift, that could last your whole life. But it's really interesting that this particular drug insert actually said that problems could occur while on the drug, but could even show up months and months and months later.
Mad.
So
I never read the insert for an antibiotic. I never read the insert for an antibiotic.
Yeah. And I don't know why I read this one, but it was kind of one of those things that was in bold. And frankly, I am very nervous about antibiotics because I know what it can do to the gut microbiome. And we actually had a family member who died from C. diff from taking antibiotics for a dental infection.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
it's a reality. It can happen. So don't take them lightly. Don't give them to your pets lightly.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that we have antibiotic resistance from
Yeah.
overuse of antibiotics that are not needed, blah, blah, blah. So whatever you can do to work on things
Yeah.
naturally, go for it.
The antibiotic resistance thing is huge. Like, to run, if I can run with that for a second, like
Sure.
a lot of when we hear of antibiotic resistance and taking too much antibiotics, we often think of the humans are doing it. There's ads on the radio, stop taking so much antibiotics. And it's like, well, we didn't buy them in the shop. We got them from a doctor. So that's the first kind of breaking wall that didn't work. But people put pressure on their doctors and it works. That's why you have ads for drugs. But more importantly, most of the antibiotic resistance is coming from agriculture. So they grow animals in dire situations, and then they use very low doses of antibiotics to keep them alive and as much disease-free as possible to get the chicken to 10 weeks or 11 weeks of age, and then they kill it. So, but they don't use lots of antibiotics. They use a little amount. So you've got dogs or you've got chickens in concentration camps fed tiny low doses of antibiotics. That's the perfect place to develop antibiotic resistance. And so all this poo from chicken houses and piggeries and place for cattle, the CAFOs, they can't put it in the storage pits, so they collect them in ponds and whatnot. These are notoriously great places for developing bad bacteria. And on top of that, you feed the animals the wrong food. So when you rear a cow on grain like corn and wheat, that's not stuff the cow's supposed to be eating. She's supposed to be eating grass. They've got 300 times the salmonella load in CAFOs than they have in pasture-fed animals. So you get this meat that's kind of dirty and high bacterial load. So antibiotic resistance is a big problem. And some of the solutions to that are in probiotics. There's a brilliant story that was passed to me by Joe Kavanagh from Ingenious Probiotics, plug for his website. I have nothing to do with them, but you're going to enjoy reading his stuff. And he tells me the story about the Amish community where they had this, creamery and dairy and whatever, and they've cleaned down the machines, and a member of the FDA, good old FDA, was standing there watching them do when they're finished. And when they're finished, they take out some kind of milk and start washing down their machines. And the guy from the FDA goes, "What are you doing? You've just cleaned your machines." And he was saying, "Oh no, we're sterilizing them now with probiotic whey wash." And the guy goes, "What? What are you talking about?" He goes, "Whey wash. After we squish cheese and the whey wash comes out, that's all full of lactobacillus and bifido, and they cover their machines in that, and they put a protective probiotic coating on the outside of it, so bad bacteria can't even get a look in. It's just good guys. So if any food was to land or be left over, you just grow more good guys." Companies like Answers Pet Food took advantage of this idea, and a lot of food companies where they put probiotics into the food. So in trials of some meat products, your beef mince gets cleaner the longer you leave it out at room temperature. I mean, it's just mind-blowing stuff. Anyway, this story evolves into some guy heard about it, and they have a big problem in Manhattan and a few of these other places where they've huge buildings with aircon, and the aircon blows cold air in on top of people, but cold air gathers moisture, and you don't want moisture air because you get listeria. So they had these big dirty tubes, and they wanted to clean them, and you can't put chemicals through them anymore. And so what could we do? Well, now they blow probiotics through the air based on this idea that they learned from the Irish community. And the guys that thought of that idea made billions, but now they're washing hospitals in them. And an enormous study out of Italy, unbelievable study. Again, I'll send it on to you. Impact of probiotic-based cleaning intervention on the microbiota ecosystem of hospital surfaces. And what they found was that the probiotic wash, it took a couple of weeks for it to all take it, was 80 to 90% better compared to conventional cleaning disinfectants. The results showed that the bacillus spores, probiotics, have the ability to germinate and sit on the surfaces, and it induced a profound abatement of the non-sarcomal pathogens on hospital surfaces. Most importantly, it reduced antibiotic-resistant genes originally present in the microbiota of the treated surfaces, an impressive decrease. So it started reducing the bacteria resistant. There's 4 of the 6 hospital infections that really lay you out. This was the way to do it. And I thought, oh, so no more need. And the guy that owns this website I just mentioned, he came from an industrial cleaning background. He goes, like, you guys are spraying your surface with antibacterial. He goes, when that dries in 10 minutes, what do you think that happens to the surface? It's just dry molecules. It blows into the dust of your house, which study shows cats and dogs are much higher in because they're nose to the ground. And then the surface is free to be recolonized by the bacteria you thought you were sorting out. I remember my baby was walking across the ground after I washed the floor in cleaning fluid, And the Dodie drops out of her mouth. And I'm like, don't put that back in your mouth. I'm thinking, how crazy is that? I just washed the floor and I don't want her putting it back in her mouth. So these guys, this industrial cleaner, Joe, he sells probiotic cleaning fluids. So now dogs with allergies and, really hypersensitive dogs, her skin's in bits, and you're washing your house with antibacterial wash, that is not helping her skin flora get back on track. So when you're trying to rehab recurring skin ear condition of the dogs, it's like, stop washing your floors and antibacterial, stop washing their beds and antibacterial, stop with the antibacterial and move to probiotic floor cleaners, probiotic wound washes. Why would you, probiotic ear cleaners, probiotic everything. It blew me away. So the probiotic cleaning is the next frontier for antibiotic resistance and for agriculture.
So cool. Yeah. There's been great studies that show that children who are brought up in like super clean houses where, there's no animals and everything is scrubbed to within the end of its life.
Yeah.
Those children actually develop a lot more allergy problems as they grow. And I look at my kids who grew up in a barn with lots of animals in the house and lots of animals outside. And, they probably, ate manure sandwiches while they were in the barn because their hands were always filthy. And you know what? They don't have allergy problems. And, they did pretty well. So, yay me for being the mom who didn't have the antiseptic house. So,
manure sandwiches, I don't know. There has to be a line somewhere. But
oh, man. Conor, I can't believe it. We're out of time. You are always such a wealth of information. So for anybody listening, I highly recommend Dr. Brady's book, Feeding Dogs, Dry or Raw, The Science Behind the Debate. You can get it on Amazon. I'm pretty sure it's on his website as well. It took me a little while to get through it because it's long and there's just so much information. But I'm one of those people, 75 Post-it notes and highlighters in 5 different colors. And I just love it. And then the other thing that you've been working on is a whole bunch of online courses. Give us a quick little 1-minute rundown on what you've got available, because we are also going to have all that available on Dr. Judy U.
Delighted you asked, because we didn't get to talk about behavior. My doctorate was on effective nutrition on behavior, and probiotics is half that lecture. So that was one of the first ones that you guys have. You'll have it up on your website there. And so my behavior webinar is becoming particularly popular. So that's getting longer and longer. It's about 2.5 hours now. But about 1.5 hours of that is the role of the gut flora and how they pull all those mechanisms and the chemicals they release. So thank God you mentioned that, because I really hope people will check that one out. It's interesting. Not enough people talking about the role of poor quality food and behavior in dogs. We're feeding them dry food and expecting them to take in their lessons. It's like kids 20 minutes after a birthday party, and now you're going to do your homework with them. I mean, those kids should be outside and lock the door. That's what dry food does, in my opinion. So the behavior one, the allergy one as well, is my other kind of the most popular one. And the allergy one is for dogs with recurring skin, ear, and gut conditions, which is the top 1, 2, 3 reasons for visiting the vet today. And there can be such a simple solution, but it needs to be done in a particular way, as you know yourself. It's not just jumping to one food and crossing your fingers. There's a set way to go through that. That is very simple, very easy to do at home, and it's going to save you a fortune. Some of these people can have spent 10, 15, 20 grand at a vet, and it's like, my God, just drug after drug after drug to focus on the symptoms. A lot of that stuff is like a little house on fire. You got to get the holes in the house. So those 2 courses are my babies of 2023. But I am hoping to do more and more as I see you and everybody else that's doing. It's like, okay, I want to start putting my content out that way. So I mean, course. You have all this knowledge, all this information, and it's so incredibly good, and more people need access to it. So dogsfirst.ie is the website. He's also on Facebook and Instagram, which is Dogs First Ireland, and his book is just a goldmine of information. And Conor, keep doing what you're doing, because love it, Judy.
I love it.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate the chance. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another great Naturally Healthy Pets episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for some helpful links. And if you enjoy the show, please be sure to follow and listen for free on your favorite podcast app. We value your feedback and would love to hear from you on how we're doing. Visit drjudymorgan.com for healthy product recommendations, comprehensive courses, upcoming events, and other fantastic resources. Until next time, keep giving your pet the vibrant life they deserve.
The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform. It is no substitute for professional care by a veterinarian, licensed nutritionist, or other qualified professional. You're encouraged to do your own research and should not rely on this information as professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Dr. Judy and her guests express their own views, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets neither endorses or opposes any particular view discussed here.